Hey everyone, welcome to Frank Analysis. I'm your host Franco, and I'm joined today by my friend Indie Left News. He's been helping this show a lot for a long time now, over a year now, I think, or almost 2 years. And you've seen the title. We're going to discuss how Breaking Points is expanding into a network with other people that are like the two main hosts, Cristobal and Sagar and Jetty. We've discussed on this show some of their origins. We're going to dive into that again to refresh some people's memories, and this may be news for some people. But we're also going to talk about how the people that they're bringing into their network, people from The Intercept, people like David Sirota, they're all affiliated with oligarchs. Sagar and Jetty and his friend Marshall are themselves, they come from a neocon institution. We're going to dive into all that here, but first, let me introduce the guests here. Indie Left News from INN, Independent News Network. It's great to have you on, brother. How are you?
Dude, it's such a good time to be back. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but like the first interview I ever did was on Frank Analysis, and it was hyping the U.S. Solutions Summit about a year ago. Like, okay, and again, good to be back. Quite a few things have happened since. I think we came on right as we were forming Indie News Network back in November, and I know you had Robert Durden on about a week or two before we announced as well, and that was modeled a lot after MCSC, after FHL/RBN network, and having independent channels and content creators kind of collaborate, pool resources, and help and lift each other, go as guests on each other's shows. And again, I publish a newsletter daily at independentleft.news, a Substack daily where I feature a lot of the leftist content creators on YouTube and Rumble and Rockfin at leftist.today. So everybody check that out. And we do a couple of shows. We do a Sunday night show called How Do We Miss That? Every Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then every couple of weeks I do a Friends of Indie Left interview show. And we're gonna have to get you on one of those sometime soon for sure.
I can't wait, and I would love that. And
Yeah,
like you
great.
mentioned, forming these networks is really beneficial, especially for a lot of us smaller content creators. All of us are like less than 100,000 subscribers and such, so we got to help each other out. All of us are not making much off of this. As much as people like to call some of us grifters and stuff, we're not making much. I personally am doing this as a hobby. Like, I have another job. Most of everybody else who people probably listen to, who's not above 100,000 subscribers, they have other jobs. So networking is something really beneficial. But now what we're seeing is with Breaking Points, they're not really presenting anything that's that novel, anything that's groundbreaking. We've discussed on this show how they try to be like, have one foot in the establishment while having one foot out all at the same time. They tell their audience to still vote for Democrats or Republicans. That's like, since they have Sagar and Jetty and Marshall on there. But let me show this real quick just to refresh people's memories. But you guys went in this article, Indie Left News, Indie Left Media, Big Mad Crab, The Dissident, breaking down all these new members that are in Breaking Points, including Sagar and Jetty, Cristobal, some new people that are joining their network, Kyle Kalinske, Ryan Grimm of The Intercept, also from The Hill, David Sirota, Jordan Cheriton of Status Quo, and we have Marshall here, who's Sagar and Jetty's sidekick. It's the best way I can put it. But you guys revealed some stuff here that I discussed a while ago, and I'm glad more people are finding out about this. Cristobal's PAC, right? It's the People's House Project, which was funded by Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman, who was the co-founder of LinkedIn, and he got in trouble a couple years ago because he was a part of this. He was a part of funding New Knowledge that was putting out there misinformation on this Alabama Senate race, and he had to apologize about it because they were all caught red-handed promoting misinformation. And we found out also that Crystal Ball's People's House Project PAC, it gave less than 3% of money to candidates. Most of the money that she made from this PAC, she saved for herself. And I played this clip.
Well,
before.
she paid herself actually a salary over the year on the public filing for 2018 of $273,000. There was about $48,000 that was donated to candidates overall that were supposed to support progressive, non-corrupted, non-corporate candidates in the Midwest and Appalachia. Sounds like that was almost tailor-made to set up for Paula Jean, but I know she does live in Virginia, so it kind of does fit that she was going to go more local into supporting local contacts. It looks like the fund raised at least $300,000, if not more. And just based upon what they actually spent out. But to me, the most interesting thing that I found in this entire thing, I don't know if you were going to go there, is an $18,000 expenditure all the way down the bottom of the line item. All right. And it's to a little law firm called Perkins Coie. And who's Perkins Coie? I think we talked about it all the way down a little further. But if you look at Perkins Coie, they are problematic, to say the least. They are Democratic Party operatives. They actually just got caught busted recently having the FBI has an office inside the Perkins Coie law firm in D.C.
Yeah, you guys talked about it here. Perkins Coie here. They paid them $18,000. And then Crystal Ball's.
That's on the filing. So. Yeah, I want to know exactly what they were paying them for, what kind of legal services. And again, there's every law firm in America you could have potentially hired, and you went for the ones that ended up in the end, they're certainly DNC tied. And the guy, I think it was Michael Sussman, the Hillary Clinton lawyer, I believe he works for Perkins Coie as well.
Yeah, all these and then they have connections with intelligence. Reid Hoffman has connections with intelligence. The way that we had that whole lawsuit recently with Hillary Clinton showing how much she had ties with intelligence with the whole Russiagate scandal. And Reid Hoffman was a part of that disinformation campaign with the institution that he funded, New Knowledge. Now, shout out to Jack Sith, because he was the one that sent me that research over 2 years ago. And Crystal Ball, and tell me if you've also noticed this, Indy, that she's always had this kind of narrative that toes the line of the establishment, but also wants to be a little bit anti-establishment. But you can either only be anti-establishment or establishment. You can't be both. So I just want to replay this clip again for people who may not have seen this, but this goes all the way back to when she was on the Hill. Back in 2019, she was still promoting Russiagate while not trying to promote Russiagate. Take a look at this.
They've got not one person. And she doesn't have any price to pay for that. In fact, I bet she gets a raise. She's not going to pay any. Rachel Maddow's not paying any price. These videos? What if it just.
Greenwald, who thinks this was all.
Right. What if Russia turns off the heat to your house, Crystal?
Greenwald, who thinks this was all ridiculous.
Okay, so here's the bad part. Here's the part where she loses the plot. Just for a little bit. Watch this.
Now look, I am not like a Glenn Greenwald who thinks this was all ridiculous and the Trump campaign did nothing nefarious vis-a-vis Russia. The president's team clearly sought to work with Russia.
So that's just some blanket assertion she puts out about Glenn. She doesn't specifically say what you disagree with about Glenn. She just talks in broad generalities. Watch this. It's kind of bullshit. But this is what I mean. She has to first genuflect at the altar of Russiagate before she can go on and debunk it.
Now look, I am not like a Glenn Greenwald who thinks this was all ridiculous and that the Trump campaign did nothing nefarious vis-a-vis Russia. The president's team clearly sought to work with Russia. They used Russian illegal activity to their own benefit, and then they lied about the whole mess to try to cover it up.
And that's why nobody was indicted. That's why after 2 investigations, 22 months by Mueller, not a fucking shred of evidence to support anything you just said. Isn't that weird? She's about to
Yeah, so, ever since then, while she was on the Hill and after that on Breaking Point, she's been she's been kind of towing the line of some establishment talking points while trying to present herself, Sagar too, as these anti-establishment populist people that are looking out for us. So what other examples have you seen, India, in which Crystal Ball has been promoting certain narratives that aren't actually going to get us anywhere, right? By still promoting electoral politics, still pushing for Nina Turner. What examples have you come across?
That I was just about to point to. That's the biggest one that I've seen the last year is the whole push towards Nina Turner, but then Marianne Williamson. Let's not discount the push of Marianne Williamson, the inclusiveness. Again, they're all friends, and that's part of this. They do, in some way, shape, or form, I'm sure, believe that Marianne is going to help or be a better candidate or choice than anybody else out there. I think that there's a lot of question over a lot of those statements for sure, but it looks like they're trying to set up. And I'm really careful. They were very careful about not calling themselves a network, and I'm not really trying to refer to them as one, whether they are or not. They're a group of affiliated independent channels and networks themselves. And there are parts of some of the logos, and this is one of the things that kind of surprised me in doing the discovery. Some of the channels and some of the people that were mentioned, I don't think that they were aware that they were going to be mentioned or have their logo shown up on a graphic in the anniversary stream, which kind of is a little newsworthy in itself. I know that, for example, there was one organization where there are some shows that have no affiliation with this channel whatsoever, and they were kind of taken aback, and they immediately were like, wait a minute, we don't know what this is, but we have nothing to do with these guys. We're still independent. I found that really interesting. But there is still some kind of a loose connection and tie here between Pierre Omidyar and Reid Hoffman. And Reid Hoffman, I believe, was also a PayPal executive, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He was also part of that group, which means that he also reported to Pierre Omidyar at one point. There are deep ties and connections there, and there may even be ties to Peter Thiel, because I believe Peter Thiel was part of the PayPal group as well.
And
look, these. Right, and these are all people that are trying to fund both sides of the discussion so that they can frame what the left and the right are able to say as acceptable discourse within the independent media that sits outside the mainstream and the mainstream media. So they're basically building, and again, Sagar even says it right there, we're looking to build a new mainstream.
With people with suit ties and dresses that are super expensive. You guys are really like working class people, right? You guys can really relate to the struggles that a lot of people are going through.
I don't think that they're necessarily trying to sell themselves as working class either. Look, the guy wears $2,000 suits every time he goes on camera, and he's glad, he's got some kind of vanity. He's got some very shiny front white teeth. I admire the cleanliness of his teeth. Everybody seems to point to how in love with his desk he is, and that $10,000 desk that they got. And again, I don't begrudge these guys. What bothers me is when you go to sell yourselves as independent, but you're billionaire funded, and that needs to be exposed, because people are really thinking that they are not corporate influence and are not looking to support the corporate behavior. But certainly Sagar is a capitalist. Marshall is a capitalist. And I think that because they're loosely tied, that none of them are socialists per se. Let's really call it for what it is. None of them are even necessarily purporting to be part of the left. I think Crystal might be, but I would call her more independent. I would certainly call Marshall and Sagar more to the libertarian conservative side. And again, here, what we like to say at INN and at Indie News Network, labels are bad, stay independent. So, because it should be about issues, and it should be about rooting out corruption and understanding what the root of people's motivations are. Why are they saying the things that they're saying? Who's funding the things that they're funding? And why are they funding it? Is it because they agree with it and they're in line with it? Are they being directly told to say things? And we need to know, think about, and take that all into account.
Yeah, and like we see, like I get a sense of dishonesty too when I see that they tend to go wherever the wind blows. Like at first they'll, like Crystal Ball in that instance, like in that video clip that I showed, was still towing a bit of the line on Russiagate. Then there's a video, and I reported on this as well, in which both Cristobal and Sagar Enjeti are laughing about Julian Assange, talking about unconfirmed information, but they took it as confirmation in which Julian Assange was being a slob and he wasn't showering, and then they were laughing about him when Julian Assange was staying at the embassy in
in London at the
in
Ecuadorian
London.
embassy in 2018. Sure, I remember that very well.
And now, like, they're finally talking about the World Economic Forum, but just a couple months ago, they were not laughing, but they were calling Dr. Robert Malone a conspiracy theorist when he went on Joe Rogan's show to talk about the World Economic Forum and their ties to Big Pharma, Pfizer, Klaus Schwab's ties to this. And they were saying that he was going to conspiracy land. Oh, but now they're talking about this. But now the whole thing that's going on right now in DC with the Bilderberg group, they're not talking about that. I don't think that they will talk about that. And there are so many people on this list on the Bilderberg group meeting for 2022's meeting.
Wow.
I completely overlooked here the other day, Reid Hoffman is here. Like, I was looking at Henry Kissinger, I was looking at Peter Thiel and everything, but here's Reid Hoffman. It says here, co-founder of Inflection AI, partner Greylock. They're not even including his ties with LinkedIn here because there's just so many things to list off here. But I mean, these are people that get to decide like how oil prices get set, which technologies are going to allow to get made for surveillance, biotechnology. So what are your thoughts of this, Cindy?
Well, I want to even add on to that and tie in Reid Hoffman, and shout out to real Alex Rubinstein, friend of the show, friend of Indy Left for sure. He put out an article through the Gray Zone last November that Reid Hoffman and George Soros were teaming up to fight quote unquote disinformation, and they created an organization called Good Information Inc., which I believe was funded with $500 million. A little bit of scratch to be able to fund some independent media if they need to, through cutouts and through, and that's the other thing is that you've got to look into the charitable organizations, you've got to look into their donations and these write-offs that they're looking to do, and they're washing this through hedge funds, they're washing it through incubators, they're washing it through, again, a lot of these folks that you see here are helping to do it.
These are the people we're supposed to be fighting against. So how are you fighting against these people if you take if you're taking in their money? The World Economic Forum just had a meeting recently around the same time as the Oscars, in which they were talking about how they can better control the narrative. Like, what message are they going to put out there for people so that they can manufacture consent for the things that they want to get passed? More venture capitalism. Which countries they should go after for their resources, and what narrative they'll use as an excuse to go after those countries. And that's what these creeps do.
I honestly have not really been watching and following much breaking points. I don't know where they are narrative-wise following the Russia-Ukraine stuff, but my guess would be, A, that they are, and I know that they're fear-mongering about China, and that's one of the things that we see frequently, and that's bleeding in from
because Marshall of this guy.
And from the Hudson Institute, well, because of this guy, but also because of Marshall and because of the Hudson Institute, where Marshall works, and because of this guy, Alan McLeod, another legend. Love this guy. He's one of the best we have. Please support him, fund him. I know they've been trying to go at him and demonetize he and Mint Press News, and they went after their PayPal funding. Love these people. They are absolutely doing the work to try to expose the corruption and the root of who's doing what, why, and what their motivations are and what their long-term goals are. Love this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great here. I mean, their Sagar Enjeti is repeating a lot of what the Hudson Institute and all these other neoconservative institutions try to put out there about China, right? And I mean, we've seen it in that in Saagar's rhetoric as well as Marshall's. There's a video here that puts together, made by what's his
Big
name?
Mad Crab, yeah, Greg.
Big Mad Crab about Saagar Enjeti saying that he wants us to be like the only navy in the Blue Sea. Talking
The only
about
blue
how we
water
should
navy,
go to
right?
how we should go to war with China if they invade Taiwan. This is all neocon talking points. So I'm gonna play this video real quick and then we'll go over it.
Go for it.
That's Ryan Grimm. Somebody's criticizing AOC in the squad. I have to come shit on a random podcaster. I'm the DC bureau chief of the fucking billionaire-funded Intercept, and I still have to peruse in Twitter defending politicians against podcasters' accurate descriptions.
The Chinese are less likely now to invade because of the setbacks the Russians have experienced.
I wanna point this out here. This is their poll that they put out on their community tab. 57% said yes, and 18% are unsure. Thankfully, 25% said no because they watch other shows and they are more informed or keep up with more honest journalism. But this is how unaware a lot of their audience is, and they're remaining unaware by continuing to watch these two. Now they've expanded to more people with this quote unquote network, whatever it is that you want to call it, these affiliated channels. But what business does the U.S. have in going to war with China if they invade Taiwan? It's also not beneficial for us. We're seeing how us working class people are negatively being affected by the sanctions that the U.S. put on Russia. That backfired really badly. But what are your thoughts on this, Indy?
Again, I'm not too surprised. I'm getting echo. There we go. So I'm not too surprised to hear it. Fear mongering. Sorry.
Hello?
Fear
Can you hear me?
about China.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I'm getting an echo. Sorry. Yeah, I can hear you now. I got you.
Okay. You still hear an echo?
Yeah, I'm hearing like a delay. Oh, hold on a second. I think I know where it's coming from. I got you. Sorry, man.
No problem.
All right. I just lost. I just ran the stream. So what I was saying about China, yes, they're fear-mongering about China. And again, it's because they're being paid to fear-monger about China. The Hudson Institute is where they're being funded by, and they have vested interest into selling into Northrop Grumman and into, what was the other defense contractor that I listed up there? But there are two defense contractors specifically that are funding the Hudson Institute, and they have vested interest in the arms race that we're going to be staffing up, and that we're going to be arming up to support who knows what against China. And the last thing I want to do is go into anything against China where they have 5 times the U.S. population.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep watching.
So that's why I think the war matters there. But the Defense Department, the White House, they are doing a great job.
That's what we already know, that Republicans are terrible.
What I tell people is if you have a conscience, you will vote third party for the rest of your life, because how dare you vote for these people?
In 2020, I voted for Biden.
Joe Biden, a racist, warmongering puppet and tool of Wall Street and an enemy of the workers, and somehow you're going to pat yourself on the back that you're a good
I
person?
think Donald Trump is a danger. I think he's terrible. I also know that I'm a white person saying this. But Hillary Clinton is not slam dunk 100% better than I, as an individual, can in good conscience vote for this.
There seems to be a laser focus on one party, Flanders, earmuffs.
hear you saying, David, is you're giving it an out for them to not do this, and that's
No, I'm not giving them an out.
Yeah,
I'm
you
saying
are.
I don't know the answer to when push really came to shove. If you said, I want these things that you really don't want to do, and that those lawmakers should then vote in the way that we're talking about to elect Kevin McCarthy Speaker, just as a human being,
As a human being,
I don't
you're
know what the right
misframing
call
this.
is at the
You
end of the
keep,
day.
as a human being, you keep misframing the issue.
She can't get 218 Democrats, then there's no speaker.
Right.
And then it kicks back to the caucus, and then it's chaos, and then a whole bunch of people can run, and then somebody will emerge. Somebody would emerge from that process.
As he points out, you don't get Kevin McCarthy as speaker.
But as long as we're not arming the Azov battalion, I have no problem arming Ukraine in general, so that they
Wow.
can protect themselves from Russian aggression.
Ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history.
They are very comfortable and okay with multipolarity. I mean, they've laughed at me.
So what is that? So what is multipolar?
Right, so they've laughed at me when I'm like, God, we'll be doomed to Europe. And they're like, oh, well, in Europe they have healthcare. And I'm like, yeah, but they also have no say over the global affairs of the world. I want to write the affairs of the world, the rules of the road. I want to be the only blue water navy.
I want to be the only blue water navy. Wow. Sagar and Jetty. I mean, how is this any different from mainstream news? Kyle Kalinske at this point in the last clip, before that, his views have really, they've been less and less on point ever since he started affiliating himself more with Crystal Ball. It seems like some of that Crystal Ball, Sagar and Jetty, Breaking Point's ideology has been absorbed by him. Wouldn't you say, Indy?
Oh, no, I would certainly say so. I think they influence each other. And again, it's centrist and it is kind of down the middle, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but centrist tends to lean conservative toward the Republican and Democratic Party because a lot of them are also, they've got money circling around them, okay? Between being funded by the Hudson Institute, being funded by The Intercept and First Look Media, being funded by whoever this Lincoln, it's not Lincoln Partners, it's Lincoln Strategies. He's a lobbyist. Marshall is a lobbyist. That's the other thing that I was able to uncover here. In investigating specifically who he's working with, one of the things that's listed on his LinkedIn profile, on his Twitter profile.
He proudly puts it there on his bio there on Twitter. That he's part of the Hudson Institute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, not just the Hudson Institute, but there's another one, the Lincoln
Network.
The Lincoln Network. Okay, so the Lincoln Network is a lobbying organization or a lobbying arm. It's not a technology company. They lobby technology companies. Right? If you look into specifically who they are and what their deal is, and who funds them, who's behind them, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. That's one of the things we're going to be doing in one of the follow-up articles that we're doing, because this is not the end of this.
Right. And Rob Durden pointed this out in a stream that he did and also in a video that he made about Breaking Points, like why they were motivated to make this network, or quote unquote network, whatever it is that they want to call it, this expansion that they have, is that the audience is like Breaking Points is losing a lot of audience. Like the audience are not interested in those talking points of reformism, of still voting for Democrats. Kyle Kalinske is also losing a lot of subscribers. So they all, got together. Same thing with Jordan Chariton. These people that were horribly wrong on the COVID issue, pushing mainstream narratives. They're not questioning authority. People see that things are wrong. They are questioning authority. They're feeling how their rights are being taken away. That our government is trying to have more control. That they're working more closely with corporations, day by day. By definition, that's fascism. These public-private partnerships. And that's why, and then they see that smaller channels benefited a lot off of having these networks. So that's what they wanted to do. But now what this is doing is it's revealing that these people are going to work closer with other like-minded people or other people that have also ties with oligarchs or neocon institutions, etc. So what do you think of that, Indy?
Well, I think they're trying to build an ecosystem of narrative, so that effectively, and in a way, it's what we've been trying to do with our networks, is we're going to provide you with enough perspectives and content creators and shows and things to watch and articles to read that are going to provide you with a perspective, with an uncorrupted perspective in our case, okay? But from them, it's quote unquote an independent perspective. Now, independent doesn't necessarily mean independent of billionaire funding, and that's the thing that I think that is kind of being dishonestly sold here. And again, it may not be directly funded by a billionaire immediately, but someone who's been tied to one, who has influence with them, who's been paid by certain foundations that have been funded by them over time. Yeah, that's going to be billionaire funded. That's how you existed, And now I just sent you a link in the private chat to the Lincoln Network, but the way that they are self-described, okay, part of what they do is they are a boutique think tank that works with policymakers and tech innovators to promote market-oriented ideas to strengthen American innovation. I mean, again, lobbying agency. Let's scroll down a little bit below there. There you go. The one in the middle with the Statue of Liberty. Very, very patriotic, as you would guess.
Yeah.
This is, again, you've got a product studio. Again, this is where they're generating their propaganda. A product studio that partners with donors to create new technology products that solve policy and social problems. The Liberty Skunk Works. All right, like
if we dig deeper here,
in plain sight.
If we dig deeper here, we're going to see that it has ties to all these corporations that are going to receive a lot of help during the Fourth Industrial Revolution, right? These virtual reality technologies and all these other technologies that are going to be used to ramp up more surveillance. But are these people in this network, Breaking Points, all these people, are they going to stand up to that? When has Kyle Kulinski ever talked about, the Fourth Industrial Revolution? When has he ever talked about the Great Reset? And Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty are finally talking about it, but they're not diving deeper into this stuff. They're just going where the wind blows. They received a lot of pressure from their audience because more people are catching on. Jimmy's starting to talk about it more with Max Blumenthal on his show. Before that, smaller journalists were talking about this. People like Jason Burmess, everybody at the MCSC network has been talking about this stuff. But now they're finally catching on. Whitney Webb, outstanding journalist, has been exposing this stuff for almost 3 years now. And these people are just talking about it now because of the pressure. So by the time they talk about it, it's like this is like old news. By the time they talk about it, it's like this stuff doesn't even matter anymore. They've already, like the people in power that they're supposed to expose have already moved along with their plans. And it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah, they're already in place. Unfortunately, look, we've had 2 years of COVID lockdowns and digital passports, and it's already halfway into a point where I think we've seen that certain processes are in motion that at this point it's going to be hard to stop, but it's easy to identify at this point where it's coming from and who it's coming from. Again, thanks to shows like yours, like the people that you've been mentioning. Again, another one Sagar's talking about in the anti-China stuff is this Jacob Hellberg, who is tied to CSIS, which is another arms manufacturer funded think tank funded by arms manufacturers, oil companies, Gulf dictatorships. I mean, this is the guy that's imparting a lot of this anti-Taiwan, anti-China,
what a populist.
Taiwan. Yeah, what a populist, exactly. So So that's really, and again, you can see the poll is right here that we had put up, screen capped from Breaking Points, and there's the Sagar clip from there. That was another thing as I'm scrolling down, Marshall with this astroturfing thing, where they go to interrupt a BDS protest on behalf of AIPAC. And he's like, yeah, I guess I'm astroturfing. Yeah, and there's a link to that. Actually, if the word documentary, if you click on that, it's queued up to 14 and a half minutes in. And he talks about that. There's about 5 or 6 minutes long. I started to cover that last night with Reef, but I don't think we got to the key meat and guts of the point. But he's like, I'm just worried that like I'm gonna get like seen here and like there's gonna be this, but I'm like kind of excited about it. And it's like, oh boy, you know.
Oh, I had no idea about that. Let's go ahead and play that for everyone. Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is one of those things where either it's going to be amazing and we're going to defeat BDS.
Oh my goodness.
We can't beat them, join them. I'm obsessed with winning, you know, so I just want to win. So I want to win something. I don't win anymore.
The protesters are on a fellowship program run by a conservative think tank called the Hoover Institution.
The whole fellowship is scrappy. It's like you guys would be like foot soldiers conservative movement. This is actually the first foot soldier activity that I think it's been important to do. Tony, what's your connection to trade conspiracy that we're all part of?
Yeah, the Israel Project.
So you can't not come. Their plan is to disrupt the National Conference of Students for Justice in Palestine. Marshall said that the pro-Israel protest had been poorly planned.
It's a very fly-by-the-pants procedure. It was basically just like Noah Paul coming and being like, look, there are these jihadis who basically support suicide bombing, and they're at a campus, and you have to stop them.
A chance to shout at Arabs?
As we're leaving, we mentioned to our boss yesterday that we're going. She's like, oh yeah, that's mandatory. You need to go.
While they've been told they have to take part in the protest, not everyone on the bus is convinced it's good for their reputation.
You know what my worst nightmare is? I'm actually not kidding. It's a photo of Dion and I together, and we're just like clearly identifiable. And they're like, "Oh, who are these like traitors who sold out to the Jewish conspiracy for money?" I'm like, "We did. We cost $50,000 plus benefits."
Really happy about
As
it.
the bus leaves, they discuss whether there's any point in staging the protest.
I'm just skeptical.
Of using the protesting tactic against them?
That's not our demographic. They don't like
The reason protests work is when like the people involved really care about it and like want to be there.
But then what are we supposed to do? Because they keep existing and they keep expanding, and no matter how many lawmakers come out against BDS, they keep growing.
Well, no, you're right. Like, we should do something, but at the end of the day, like, the notion that the right is ever going to dominate any sort of campus protesting is ridiculous.
You can't just let them.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
And that's what happened.
If I were a high-level Jewish doer, I would be like a little more realistic about expectations.
So what would you do if you were a high-level Jewish?
I continue to do what you're doing, which is focusing on the actual power structures that use power structures in themselves. Like the reality is, there's not a single college president in this country that would actually sign BDS. There is not a single.
They all allow SJP to exist on their campus.
Because it's free speech, they cannot let them.
So what are they supposed to do about it?
When a protest is sponsored and organized by outsiders, but made to appear like a popular grassroots movement, it's known as astroturfing.
They did a really job of getting me excited to show up and protest.
It kind of, the way you're putting it kind of sounds a bit like astroturfing.
No, this is astroturfing. No, this is actually, there's a bus.
What does that mean?
It's when you set up things.
It's the difference between grassroots and astroturf.
You're taking corporate money and you're manufacturing the image of a grassroots movement with corporate money by basically paying people to appear as activists. It just shows how little actual grassroots power they have and how all of their power is at the top.
It's not that astroturfing is wrong. It's just that, like, your astroturf has to be like committed.
What the heck?
We shouldn't have fellows saying, like, honestly, this is bad for my political career.
The bus arrives at George Mason University, where Students for Justice in Palestine is holding its national conference. But the protesters can't find the conference hall.
They just pull over and ask, hey, where are all the jihadis?
The driver sees two students and stops to ask directions. One is wearing a headscarf.
Oh no! Come on!
Right, back to DC. Back to DC.
I believe the comments said.
Excuse me? Do you know where the Johnson Center is? Okay, just go back down this. Okay, thank you.
That was problematic.
So this is off to a good start.
Students for Justice in Palestine really is a student-led type of organization focused around promoting the BDS cause. We have workshops on how to grow our divestment campaign.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean, all these universities near DC, especially George Mason, there, what they were showing, they have a strong affiliation and influence by the intelligence community there. But it seems like these are Marshall's genuine beliefs regarding Israel. And as we were just going over here with Indy, the upbringing that Marshall and Saagar Enjeti have with these neoconservative institutions, I mean, how are you going to call that populism? How are you fighting against the people in power if you're listening to people who have ideologies that are influenced by these institutions that they're supposed to be fighting against? And now they're bringing in people who also claim to be fighting against these powerful entities. I want to bring up Jordan Chariton, who was recently online trying to say that Jimmy Dore and some other people are aligning themselves with right wingers, and with the Combo Couch as well. Like Jordan Chariton would say, "Oh, these guys are aligning themselves with right wingers and right wing conspiracy theories in regards to elections and all this stuff." But then he's okay with joining this network that has a right wing co-host and another individual, Marshall, who's also part of this quote unquote network. So what do you think about that hypocrisy in Jordan Chariton, Indy?
Oh man, so many things I can say about our friend, quote unquote, well, whatever. Honestly, but one of my favorite parts, our other INM brother, STFU, Shitlib Joe, he put out another video and he shows the CJ clip and he's like, this guy, and he puts George's face. So yeah. And really, I mean, look, this guy, he's for years has been trying to gain acceptance into a group and land his ship. Look, he started his own independent news agency that he's been bootstrapping and self-funding and user funding and limping along and doing everything he can to keep the lights on. And he sees an opportunity, I think, in latching onto some bigger channels to kind of, amplify the reporting that he's doing, the people that are connected to him. I'm not necessarily faulting, but I understand where it's coming from. However, I don't know if it's necessarily being done looking completely at who these people are and who he's aligning with. Or maybe he is. Look, when he had the Flint story 2 years ago and he needed somebody to publish it and he wanted to go to a larger outlet, who did he go to? He went to The Intercept. There is precedent here, and there's been affiliations in the past. And look, would he still be working? That's Reef's contention, is that Jordan would still be working for TYT if things hadn't ended badly there. Honestly, he's not the one that I'm necessarily focused on, because I don't think that he's one of the people who is directly being influenced by one of these big money donors. I think that he is more on the ancillary of that, and some of the things that he reports on align with that. He also does report on a lot of poverty stuff. And, when you're talking about upper middle class to wealthy people, covering the pot, it's important, and I want them to be focused on it and looking at it. But what I don't see them doing is being focused on mutual aid and doing much to actually support the communities that they're profiting off of by doing stories about these people. And again, I don't want to be accusatory at all. Everybody is entitled to run their business and to operate the way that they want to operate. I just feel like there should be some kind of a fund set up, some kind of a knowledge or resource, a website. Where can people who want to help the people of Flint go after 8 years or however many years that they've been covering the story? You would think that there would be some kind of a set of resources available to the public who wants to help, that might even brand them and bring people and create more of a name that says, hey, this is the organization and the company and people that actually do care about the people of Flint and the people of the community, and not just looking to quote unquote sell a story, which I know that other people have made accusations of. Again, I'm not necessarily making that accusation, but I have heard it thrown around.
The main criticism I have with Jordan is the ideology here. I mean, I'm sure the majority of the audience here would understand, right? My stance on electoral politics is controlled by these corporations. It's not a way you can solve our problems right now. And then when these politicians get in, they're working with legislation that's crafted by lobbyists. So you guys will already know, I don't agree with the ideology that Jordan promotes. He does some great work on the ground, but what I wanted to point out was this is the ideology that's being attracted by Breaking Points or wanting to collaborate with Breaking Points, is people that are not offering actual solutions to our problems and are not diving deeper into the problems of this country, and fall for mainstream narratives like what happened with COVID, like what happens with our election system and all that. But yeah, I agree with everything 100% what you were saying, Indy, there about in regards to Jordan Sheraton. Now, some of the other people that you guys discussed in this article that are joining are all these people affiliated with The Intercept. Ryan Grimm, who else? David Sirota. Now, why should we be worried about The Intercept, Indy, joining Breaking Points?
Well, The Intercept, from the time that they've been burying the Betsy Reed, since Betsy Reed really has come on and become the managing editor there, I think we've seen a step back in the influence of Jeremy Scahill. We saw a censoring of Glenn Greenwald and the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yep.
But we've also seen a lot of apologists for the squad and a lot of access journalism happening over the last few years. And I have to say that I was one of the founding donors back to The Intercept. I used to give my $50 or $100 a year and subscribe. And I was a big supporter of that organization. Again, Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, Jeremy Scahill, they went in with billionaire Pierre Omidyar's money. Now, we didn't know anything about him necessarily to the level that we understand now, but it seemed, again, and maybe was he trying to fund both sides of the operation? But look, this was really, truly people that could say whatever they want to say without repercussions from anybody. Because they were hired and put there because they said what they said. So that's what happened in 2013. Big follower, big fan. But what I saw over time was that they were changing their narrative, that they were aligning more with the Democratic Party, that they hired an editor who had TDS, that they started bringing in more of the national security state, more mainstream writers like James Risen, for example. And it changed the way that Ryan Grimm, who had some quote unquote lefty credentials, I guess, but TYT, and again, I don't even want to go into any of that stuff.
What, the TYT stuff?
Well, and the affiliation between TYT and The Intercept and being funded by wealthy donors and influence networks and everything. I mean, it all kind of links, and Ryan Grimm was a TYT guy, and then he moved to The Intercept. I remember he kind of parlayed, if I remember correctly, kind of that gig into following around AOC and her primary run, and effectively moving that and playing off of that in order to gain the job with The Intercept, where he's the Washington bureau chief. And as Jimmy Dore loves to say, that he's paid by 3 billionaires simultaneously. So where does his affiliation and where does his heart and where do his loyalties lie? They lie with the story. They lie with his bosses. They lie with the magazines and the organizations that he represents.
And The Intercept has a horrible track record when it comes to protecting whistleblowers. There's an article about that written by Whitney Webb on Mint Press News, and I discussed that here and even talked about it to Ryan Grimm. I was like, why are you still working in this journal outlet that has a horrible track record with whistleblowers? And I showed him some quotes by Piero Migliar about what he thinks about whistleblowers, and he didn't have nice things to say about them. Consistent with how Cristobal and Sagar and Jetty at one point were laughing because they bought some of the misinformation about Julian Assange and his behavior in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. But I mean, these are
what
the
about
kind
shutting
of people
down
that are
the
there.
what about shutting down the Snowden archives? I mean,
That as well, yeah.
I mean, The Intercept has pulled some moves that are certainly questionable, and it appears that they have, you know, kind of, again, a new mainstream has started to emerge between this group of networks where, again, you now have the corporate mainstream, and then you have the quote unquote anti-corporate mainstream, the independent mainstream, and then
Which
you're going
is
to have
really
everybody
still
else.
corporate.
Which is still kind of corporate funded, or at least corporate influenced, okay? But the point is between the two of them, there's not much space for anybody else to be able to take up. YouTube now has a whole other set of channels and things to promote and push us further out to the edges and to the sides. And thank goodness for platforms like Rockfin and Odyssey that are giving us a voice, that are not suppressing us, that are not giving corporate media that's paying their way in heavy priority. And I saw a statistic from FAIR. I shared it with Misty. I believe it was 88% of the media consumed were funded by the big 20 media groups on YouTube in the month of March.
Jeez.
They're corporate media.
I mean, they show up on as like recommended videos and stuff when you type in certain stories and stuff on the search engine on YouTube. Breaking points would still show up, just like when Cristobal and Sagar were on the Hill's videos would still show up. And so they have a contract with Google, and so they receive a lot of help. Same thing with TYT, and you guys should question any person that promotes themselves as independent media or a group that promotes themselves as independent media, but they still get promoted by YouTube's algorithm heavily. You should question why it is that YouTube keeps heavily promoting these channels. Similar to that Snowden leak file that they withheld, they also withheld WikiLeaks files on the chemical attack, on how that was a false flag in Syria. And I mean, they have Mehdi Hassan there on The Intercept, who now works with MSNBC. Here he is. He wrote an article back in 2018 calling everybody that stands against the U.S.'s position against Syria as a Bashar al-Assad apologist. You know, as if everybody is going to everybody that stands against what the U.S. is doing in Syria is automatically like a fan of everything that Bashar al-Assad does. And for the record, no, I'm not going to say that Bashar al-Assad is a dictator. I wouldn't say that.
Assad apologist. Come on, that means you're an Assad apologist, right?
According to Mehdi
Isn't that
Hassan,
what the deal is?
According to Mehdi Hassan in The Intercept, I'm an Assad apologist.
Well, for our brother Richard Medhurst, let's throw a shoe at Mehdi Hassan.
Yeah. He's doing, Richard Medhurst is doing a lot of great work recently on foreign policy and everything. Shout out to him.
Absolutely. He's been blowing up, and I love to see everybody subscribing and sharing his videos, and we've been including him in Independent Left News pretty much since I discovered him and met him about 2 years ago. And what a dude, and just absolute fire, bringing it, and researching the Assange case, covering corruption, looking at, again, that David Mendoza story that he broke about the U.S. breaking the promise of the no extradition type of stuff. Wow. I mean, great stuff from him. But yeah, I mean, look, so this was pointing out, and shout out again, NCSC, Robbie Yeager.
Yeah.
Love that dude. Wait, this is one of the shows where I first discovered him. First interview I ever did was with Robbie, because I'm like, I want to talk to this dude about Colonial Pipeline, and I want to talk to him about this guy. So what he found was that First Look Media, while it was funded in the beginning by Pierre, now it's been taken over by Dustin Moskovitz, one of the co-founders of Facebook, who's also a heavy DNC donor. And that's what I wanted to point out by linking this tweet.
Yeah, I mean, here ties to Silicon Valley and all that. And I mean, there would be no Silicon Valley without the US's intelligence community. All these
that is a $2 billion. That's a $2 billion incubator. That Silicon Valley Charity Foundation, 32 million of which went to First Look Media to fund The Intercept in 2018.
Jesus. Once again, let me propose to the audience. You're seeing all this information. How is this independent news? How is this not mainstream news? Right? And who can we? This is the last name on here that we can touch on, right?
Yeah, Matt Stoller.
Besides
Yep.
Matt Stoller, I
Running
want to refer everybody to Savvy Sab's video on David Sirota. Outstanding breakdown of that guy. He's married to a corporate Democrat. But just very briefly in like about a minute, what can you say about David Sirota before we get to Matt Stoller, Indy?
Man, I actually have been one of the biggest fans, supporters, and amplifiers of David Sirota, of TMI newsletter that he first started as a Substack, of the Daily Poster, now becoming the Lever. I started to get a little concerned. Again, I've always said I stand with Sirota, but and I know his wife, Emily, she's a Democrat. She's not a corporate Democrat. She defeated a corporate Democrat, but she's still a Democrat. She still aligns with the Democratic Party. She still identifies as a Democrat. So I do want to make that clarification. And I know that he's been running around saying, I'm not a corporate Democrat. No, not necessarily. But what he's not doing is telling people what to do in place of voting for corporate Democrats, or at least Democrats that are aligned with corporate Democrats. I don't hear the either vote for third parties, let's find an alternative solution, let's do some direct action, let's do some protests, let's do some direct democracy, let's come up with some solutions to actually move this forward and get past this logjam between the two-party duopoly system. I don't hear, he's pointing out what the problem is, but he's not pointing out what the solution is. And that's what drives me crazy. And he says, I'm here to expose the corruption, and that's great. But if the solution ends up becoming, and because, as Compton Chase said, you're fucking a corporate Democrat, you're fucking a Democrat. But if that's going to end up being where your loyalties lie, look, we're going to have to question some of it. And again, he's done some phenomenal reporting on exposing corruption across the board, both on Republican and on the Democratic side. He was instrumental in exposing Andrew Cuomo's ties and what he was doing with the nursing homes. I mean, there are some great stories this guy's done, and that's what's so disheartening and disappointing is, to not have him pay nearly as much attention to the outlets and independent organizations that have been amplifying and talking about him when nobody else would after Bernie's campaign. All right. And he was on the right side of that when it came to Bernie's campaign. I thought there were three people that were really fighting for the lefty side against the Chuck Rokas, against the Jeff Weavers, against the Matt Dusses, against the neoliberals that were fighting the plants inside Bernie's organization that were pulling the whole thing to the right, the Democratic Party. David Sirota was actually one of the people that was speaking the kind of stuff that I was speaking. But again, he doesn't take it through to its full conclusion. I love the man to death, but I just wish he would take it one step further. And now again, Savvy did some great research into his funding. So what happened was last year, Don't Look Up happened. And it started to really have me look a little closer at exactly who he's tied to, exactly who he's friends with. And all of a sudden it's blown up and he's got every major Hollywood actor in this thing, and he's now landed the ship. He's now got enough to basically take care of him and his family and his organization for life. And I'm thrilled and so happy for him. And I don't begrudge anybody for being a success for what they wrote.
Yeah, and I've been saying this since I first started Frank Analysis, is that we can still find useful information and some of these people, but it's important for us to go deeper. How do you know if they're actually if the information that they're presenting is 100% authentic and everything? And sometimes the information that they do write about or talk about on their shows will be authentic. but that doesn't mean that everything that they talk about is going to be authentic. So I'm not telling people to not listen to anything at all that, you know, some of these channels or journalists say or write about, but be aware of instances in which they've been very wrong, or what appears to be like they've been highly influenced by these corporations that they're supposed to be fighting against. Be aware of all of that, right? And chances are that if there are, like, for example, all these people here and breaking points that we're discussing here, there's going to be other journalists out there that do better work on the same topics than these people are doing.
Yeah, connections, motivations, blind spots. It's important to understand where the background is behind all these people, why they're saying what they're saying, and potentially who may be funding it and what the motivation behind it is. Is it purely in support of the people? Is it in support of an agenda? Whose agenda is that going to be? And is it because it's aligning with somebody else's agenda? They don't even realize it's, that's what I call the useful idiot portion. And so sometimes people don't even realize that they're being manipulated or being brought in or hired to be on a certain story or in a certain area because they're aligning with the narrative that these wealthier individuals that are trying to frame both sides of the argument are trying to project. So I got kids dinner, man. I really, again, I appreciate all the time, and I love being on the show. I love you guys. I love you, Franco. MCSC, again, everybody, shout out to all my INN brothers and sisters. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I appreciate listening and checking out the story. Go to indienewsnetwork.substack.com. You can read the article in full that Franco was going through. We're going to be publishing a follow-up sometime this week. As soon as I can sit down and actually write some of it and collaborate with some of my INN partners, we're going to have a follow-up story to this, and we're going to talk about some of the other things that we talked about today.
And I'll bring you back on for that, Indy. You're doing great work out there, and thank you for everything that you do. Guys, we didn't get to touch on the Matt Stoller stuff, but read that in the article. It's pretty much going to be similar to everything that we just discussed here about everybody else. That's affiliated now with Breaking Points. Thank you, Indy. Guys, check out that article. And also give Indie Left News a follow. Support INN. Also support all these small independent news channels. We got Marcus Cage in the chat. You guys should check out what's new. What we've been thinking with Marcus Cage and the Political Matrix. And I have him on as a guest a lot. We got Big Mad Crab, who was a co-author in that article that we just discussed here. Shout out to him. And guys, thank you very much for watching. You're not alone, clearly, from what you see in the chat, and I know that you'll stay informed.